are listening to On the Topic, and this week I'm cheating death several times and I'm going to win the lottery. Is this a simulation? I'm Dan.
And we're going to go ever further down that rabbit hole. Is it deja vu? Is it Mandela effect? It could be all those things and more. I'm Alex, and this week we are going to be talking about the simulation theory. But before we do so, Dan, we want to go back to our last episode very quickly, don't we?
Your most anticipated 2024, where we got a bit raunchy. But we got another comment from a listener.
Oh yeah, tell us.
So Kyle got in contact. This is what he's looking forward to this year.
Shout out to Kyle.
Gigs, he's put Arctan Ghent. Was that Gent? I don't know. Limp Bizkit in Margate.
No way.
Yeah. Do you know what? I picked up Limp Bizkit on Spotify the other day. I think I messaged you, didn't I? I said,
new stuff or just the old?
Just the old stuff.
That's still good though.
Significant Other.
Fred Durst?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Significant Other's a brilliant album.
Mm.
Events, the Euros and the Olympics. So I don't know how we both missed
Oh yeah. It is Euros year, isn't it?
Are we going to do it this year, Alex? Is it coming home?
I don't know with the current team lineup. We gave it a good shot last time. Not sure.
We'll see.
We'll see.
But who doesn't love the Olympics?
It's always... This is the thing. Whenever it's on, every 4 years?
Yes.
Always have it on in the background, and you see some absolute random shit, and you're like, is this a sport? This is cool. Cool as fuck, but I would never think to purposely watch it. Like, that person speed climbing a mountain. That's amazing, or something like that. And you're like, this is really... Or skateboarding is...
yeah, I was going to say.
Snowboarding is in the Winter Olympics. But you know what I mean? Like, it's all really interesting stuff. Because you don't... Usually when the Olympics, like, oh yeah, the shot put, the javelin, you know, the old school, proper Grecian type stuff. But there's some really interesting events out there. So, yeah, it's a good shout.
I wish the...
Paralympics
The
now?
Paralympics, that's it.
Yeah.
I wish that got a bit more airtime compared to the normal Olympics, because I tell you what, they're just as talented. You know?
Oh, and more some. You know, some of the things they have to overcome in order to get anywhere close to competing at their level is fantastic. They've overcome those societal challenges, their physical disabilities, and they're like superhumans. It's phenomenal. So yeah, it really is fantastic stuff. And that's usually, I think it's 2 weeks afterwards or 3 weeks after the main Olympics. It is shortly afterwards to give you a break. You
can usually tell when the Olympics are starting to die off, because the events, as you get towards the end, sort of get naff. All the good stuff sort of near the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking forward to the Olympics.
That's because they run out of decent gold medals down.
Yeah.
Stock's running down.
And for TV, he's put Doctor Who, and I believe that is going to be Nkuti Gatwa from Sex Ed. Mm-hmm. Not a Doctor Who fan.
I'm not either.
I couldn't get on board. But...
Apparently, though, interesting fact, if you want to be Dan, or if you are a fan but haven't caught up, or want to go back and see some of the old stuff, they're all on iPlayer. All like 700 episodes.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so there's kind of no excuse.
Yeah. But should we do it? Should we dive into this week's absolute left field mind bender?
Yeah, our new addition to the rabbit hole. Simulation theory, Dan. I got a question for you.
Yep.
What is reality?
Good question. You're going to tell me, right?
Well, no. I've got more questions than answers. Imagine a reality where our existence is not as concrete as it seems, Dan, or listener, but as a complex, hyper-realistic simulation created by advanced intelligence. The central premise is that an advanced civilization, perhaps, possibly far beyond our current technological capabilities, Dan, has created a complex simulation that mimics the conditions of our universe. Now, not only is it possible that we're living in this simulation, apparently it's definitely possible. Some say almost 50% possible, Dan.
So this is what I got. Doing my notes. Simulation theory says that we are all likely living in an extremely powerful computer program directed by an entity outside of our physical comprehension.
Yes.
In this situation, humans are not necessarily real and tangible beings, but instead predetermined, coded constructs of the digital world we inhabit.
Hang on a sec.
No, I felt that.
I just pinched him. Listener.
He did. He literally just pinched me. I'm fuming.
But are you coded to respond like that? And actually, are you not real? It's kind of has feels of what's the Leonardo DiCaprio film where he goes into the dreams. Inception. Feels like Inception, because obviously the dream world, they're not real. They're all construct of imagination. Are you just a construct of the program, Dan?
I don't know.
Or are you programmed to have those emotions and even you're not real?
As we get further into the episode, I've got irrefutable reasons why we might be living in a simulation. But then, like yourself, I've got more questions than answers, but some compelling stories as well.
Yeah, I've got... we've got the Russian doll and the base reality concept.
What?
Like you, I've got some potential evidence? Question mark. Yep. We have a bit of science. How's your GCSE science?
It took me 3 attempts to get a C.
Okay, so we may have to give you some catch up. That's fine.
Simplify it for me.
We'll have some science. I talk a bit about creation theory, and then deja vu and some stories.
Isn't it weird? Well, obviously we'll talk about this in a minute, but when you get deja vu, you try to hold on to that feeling,
and it slips away.
It's gone before you
fleetingly. I know.
Grasp it.
You know, the moment it happens, you know it, but as you say, it's like a dream. You just you can't recall it almost immediately. It's really, really odd. And that's not right, because you're consciously acknowledging that something has happened again, but then 30 seconds to a minute later, it's
gone.
You moved on.
It's very odd.
Some theories, Dan.
Yep, let's do it.
Philosopher Nick Bostrom. Heard about him?
Got him in my notes.
Okay.
But yeah, pray tell.
Well, he says that actually some of the following is true. This is what's called an Occam razor, which in non-scientific speak is essentially very complex ideas are simplified down to their base elements. So Nick says there's actually only 3 different possible outcomes to the fact of a simulation theory. Either we are in a simulation or we're not. Now, he says we destroy ourselves before we're able to create a simulation. So we haven't done it. It's not reality because we never did, because we're freaking nuking each other, or we're running the planet into famine, or any other miserable outcome. That's a scenario that's feasible. The doomsday clock is ever closer to midnight, as they say, every freaking year. It gets really depressing. There's still war, there's still famine, there's still horrible diseases, COVID, that are rampant. So are we ever going to get to a point where we can create this technology in order for us to enter into a simulation or to create a simulation? Possibly not. That's one scenario. There's another scenario, is that we're able to create a simulation. Look at ChatGPT-4. I mean, that's come on leaps and bounds between 3 and 4 in the last 3-4 months. Technology is advancing at a significant rate, and that's our physicality, our technical infrastructure, our RAM speed, our technology is holding us back. We want to do these things, we just can't physically do it.
Yeah.
But there might come a point where we can do it, but actually, should we? And there's an interesting question. What's the benefits, and why would we create a simulation of a reality? To what benefit is there apart from perhaps scientific observation? Are we the aliens? And we'll talk about that no doubt in a sec. So there's 2 options.
Yeah.
The third option, Dan, is we're definitely in a simulation.
Oh boy.
Now, I'm not entirely sure actually there's only 3 options. As I say, that's the Occam razor approach. It's a simplified way of explaining something that's really quite complex. For me, I think there's actually countless different options that surely exist. However, if we go by Nick Bostrom's theorising, we've got a 33% chance of being in the simulation. And actually, this is either real or not real.
I mean, his hypothesis actually says that an advanced civilization should reach a point where their technology is so sophisticated that simulations would be indistinguishable from reality, and the participants would not be aware that they are in a simulation. Mm-hmm. Some bonkers stuff there.
I mean, just think about this for a second, Dan and listener. We simulate everything. And let's just talk about games. You know, look at The Sims. But look at racing games, racing simulators in the title. Think about some of we talked about in a previous episode, our favourite games. They're based on simulations.
That's how pilots learn their trade, isn't it?
Correct.
Put them in a simulation.
Look at scientists. They simulate everything in order to recreate conditions which are risk-free. You can't actually blow up something and observe it happening because you destroy the world or you destroy our environment. So they simulate those things on a smaller scale, or in a computer program where they have all of those aspects and they stipulate based on scientific values at what the outcome will be. Simulated.
Tony Stark did it in Endgame, simulating the old quantum theory.
Exactly.
It's fiction, but
it proves the point is we simulate now significant amounts. So is it really too much of a stretch to say actually either in the future we get to a point where we can, again Mr. Bostrom's theory is that we can do this because we're kind of doing it every day. Your computer is simulating a process. You know, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that it's a feasible concept. I don't know whether I personally subscribe to even researching this, and I really enjoyed researching this down listener. I wouldn't even say I'm on the fence. I don't think we are, but I think it's an interesting concept to entertain. And actually, if we are not, I think it's not too much of a stretch to say that in the future, near future, we might be in a position that actually we probably will be. Look at Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Look at the metaverse. We're looking to actually make a Ready Player One type scenario in the metaverse. We're doing it. So, look into 50 years into the future. What's reality going to look like?
Yeah. Who knows?
I know.
It'll be after our lifetime anyway.
Let's hope so.
Talking of physicists, have you heard of Seth Lloyd?
Rings a bell, but no. Enlighten me.
So Seth Lloyd from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the US took the simulation hypothesis to the next level by suggesting that the entire universe could be a giant quantum computer.
Wow.
Yeah. Very, very fascinating. The idea is not that new, though.
Okay.
So in 1989, the legendary physicist John Archibald Wheeler suggests that the universe is fundamentally mathematical and it can be seen as merging from information.
Yeah, I did read this where basically everything in nature has a mathematical foundation. And they've even said that they can actually superimpose computer code into atoms and into DNA. So we can superimpose and make things compatible to external forces by using maths and mathematics, which itself just is mind-boggling. There are patterns out in nature which defy logic and thought, but for instance, if you observe certain, I'll talk about it a little bit later on, waveforms of electrons, or if you look at how nature, icicles, how they freeze, they are perfect shapes and they are divisible by a perfect golden number, and all these things, they shouldn't have that much logic and sense because they're born seemingly out of chaos, and they do. Why is everything applicable to maths and mathematics?
Yeah. Just hold on to this thought as well before we sort of carry on. A common answer is that we live in an infinite multiverse of universes, so we shouldn't be surprised that at least one universe has turned out as ours. But another is that our universe is a computer simulation with someone, perhaps an advanced alien species, fine-tuning the conditions.
As they go. Can we roll that though? Do you have any other scientific contributions before I get into the rabbit hole?
No, not really. I found the scientific part a little bit eye-watering.
Okay.
But the more I started to dive into sort of like the real nutty stuff, it started to make a bit more sense. I was like, oh, okay.
Okay.
And then it starts to tie into some of our previous episodes, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Okay. Well, can I just talk about the Russian doll and the base reality concept very quickly?
Yeah, do. Is this an irrefutable reason why we might be living in a simulation?
No.
Or is this multiversal stuff?
Essentially, yeah. So there are some theories that a computer is created to simulate a reality. We talked about it before. You just mentioned it there. So imagine we get to a point, either we ourselves can create this simulation,
yeah,
and we create a new reality, or someone else has done it and we're in a new reality. But the question is, how many versions of that reality are we in? And which one's the base reality, the real reality? So imagine this, like a Russian doll. So Russian doll, Dan, listen, if you're not familiar, where are you with cultural items of antiquities or whatever.
I
But
remember the Russian dolls. They start with a small one, and it goes into a bigger one.
they're
and
in
a big
shells.
one, and then
it's a
it gets
big one,
bigger.
correct. And as you open it up, it gets into a little doll and little doll and little doll. This is, it says it's a Russian doll. The big doll, Dan, a listener. The one that you'll buy from the airport or from the knick-knack shop from Russia or whatever. That's the base reality. You're the alien, or you are people today who make that base reality in a computer. Open it up. Open up that shell, and inside you've got another Russian doll, slightly smaller. But that's the simulated reality. They don't know it's simulated. They just know that that's a reality. But they get to a point, Dan, a listener, that they create their own simulated reality, their own computer, their own intelligence. They come so far in their technological advancement that they're unaware of us, the base reality, and they make a new simulated reality, Dan. Open up that Russian doll again. You've then got a smaller simulated, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And people have stipulated and said, actually, what are the chances of us being that base reality? Now, we've talked about Elon Musk before. We're not necessarily fans. He's an interesting thought provoker, and he says a lot of things. Some of it comes to fruition. Look at SpaceX and other things. He says it's likely to be 1 in several billion chances that we are the base reality if we are in a simulated reality. 1 in several billion, Dan.
Yeah.
So there could be countless
sense, right?
other realities behind us before we get to the original, which is mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like, there's no possible way for us to know. How about Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Pardon?
Yeah, he's an older gentleman from America. He's a physicist, very famous actually in America. He's very knowledgeable about these facts, mainly about astrophysicism, physicists. He says it's a 50-50 chance that we are in a base reality, if this is a simulated reality. I don't know if I like those odds any better. So yeah, that's the Russian doll and the base reality concept. At some point, if we do get to that reality, we are the original creators. We are the gods of that reality. And that's on a computer somewhere. And then that reality eventually creates their own computer and their own reality.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So you go further down that rabbit hole. Got a question for you though. If we're the base reality and that computer goes offline, what happens to all those other realities? They cease to exist.
Yes.
That's even more of a spine-chilling thought.
So what you're saying is, if we're not the base reality and that
We're
computer
dependent.
goes off, we're suddenly just non-existent. Put my teeth in
Non-existent?
next. Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Yeah, we won't know about it. The power is cut and we will fade into nothing, I guess.
Mad.
Hopefully I haven't scared you listening, you're still listening. But yeah, that's a really interesting concept. I don't know. Again, I don't know where I sit on the fence from that perspective, but I think it's fascinating that the idea is being batted around, and I'm not sure if I fancy those odds.
Well, I've got some reasons why we might actually be living in a simulation.
Oh, okay, tell us.
So the first one, of course, you mentioned, the Mandela effect.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to revisit that, OTT 70, which is from the TW Rad Vault. And of course that is the collective memories of something that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent you one recently, actually, the Fruit of the Loom logo.
Yes.
Where apparently the cornucopia doesn't actually exist.
Apparently not. But someone did find it somewhere.
Yes.
Which is very odd, but it's people have scoured the internet and from archives, and it's been very difficult to find, but they have found some reference somewhere.
That's a good rabbit hole to go down, and I remember I actually had to question this existence that we're living in.
Wow.
It was a mind-bending episode. So
it really is.
It is really worth checking out.
Yeah.
The next one is Missing Aliens.
Yeah,
Why
I've got this one.
haven't we seen them?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got this one. So this is the Drake equation.
Okay.
So the Drake equation is probabilistic formula that was developed in 1961 by the astrophysicist Frank Drake to estimate the number of active communicative extraterrestrial civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. So in our immediate neighbourhood.
Yeah.
Obviously, the universe made up of millions upon billions of galaxies. Within there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of different planets and constellations. The immediate Milky Way galaxy, the equation is a way to stimulate scientific dialogue about the factors that contribute to the likelihood of there being extraterrestrial civilizations. And apparently the ratio, but it's quite a complex one, I couldn't even begin to tell you, Dan, listener. But apparently 200 billion trillion stars. I can't even imagine what that looks like.
No.
The Drake equation states there should be 1 million intelligent life signs in our galaxy alone. So there should be 1 million similar planets to Earth or that harbour intelligent life, not just microorganisms, not amoeba in pools of whatever, organic goo. No, we're talking intelligent life signs. Should be 1 million of us out there in our neighbourhood. We haven't seen them. Why?
I've got no answers. But then we don't know what's in Area 51 or, what the US government aren't revealing at the moment.
And they probably never will.
I doubt we'll ever get the signs. Didn't Trump try and push for it before he got kicked out?
Oh, they all do. It's the last thing they do because they're not in charge. But if they are supposed to be out there, maybe they don't exist because they're not supposed to, Dan.
Yes.
Think about games. Going back to our gaming world, we talk about simulation. It's a construct that has to have boundaries. Games, open world games, seemingly have the idea that you can go anywhere you want. But what happens when you can't, Dan? Think about some of the seemingly open world games that you play. What happens when you come to that boundary? What happens?
Well, sometimes it doesn't allow you to go any further.
Yeah.
Or if you keep moving, you suddenly end up on the other side of the map, and that's what basically I'm thinking of Final Fantasy VII, the original. You go from one side of the map and you suddenly come out from the other side.
Correct. Because that is the way which has been designed, and you can't go forever because it's not the processing power or the memory of the game.
Yeah.
Come to more modern games. This is really going to age this episode now, but Starfield, the much maligned perhaps or celebrated game, depending where you are, that modders have taken to the game as they have done with Skyrim before that, and they're making it such a fantastic place to play, much better than what Bethesda can do. No shock there. And they've noticed that when it rains, Dan, it's only within the immediate field of view of the player. It's a first-person game, or can be third-person. But if you zoom out further enough, the rain is only within like a 10-metre radius.
Yeah.
Anything outside of that, and it's just normal. You know, like those old cartoons where the cloud is hovering above the character,
classic,
and it's raining on them, but everything outside of the character is dry and doesn't get rained on. It's the same thing in the computer game in Starfield, because the player doesn't see that. So why does it matter if it's raining 2 miles away? Because you're never going to go over there. The reason why I bring that up, listener and Dan, is because there's a concept to say, well, aliens don't exist because we're not meant to go out into the cosmos. Because currently we don't have the technology nor the means. It takes too bloody long to travel to our nearest constellation in order to go and see if there's something over there. So why divert processing power of your quantum computer, of your reality, if you're never going to go over there anyway?
Yeah.
Perhaps we're only rendering our immediate environment because that's all we need. And some people are stretching. I appreciate this is really head-scratching, interesting, or batshit concepts. But if you follow the principle of it's a computer or it's a construct, then it's not too difficult to think, actually, well, if we were going to be the authors of this reality, why would we not design something similar? To build in those boundaries that people can't possibly surpass because we haven't got enough processing power, or because we haven't got the ability to do it because we're not technologically to that point. And I think that's a really interesting but troubling concept.
Well, it's interesting because Earth, so another one, the Goldilocks zone.
Yes.
Earth exists within what astrobiologists call a Goldilocks zone, which is close enough to a star that greenhouse gases can trap heat and keep liquid water, but far enough from that the planet does not become a Vesuvian hothouse. That we live in such an orbital sweet spot in circumstantial evidence for a simulation. If our sim designers wanted us to succeed, it makes sense that they're placed in such a cushy environment.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever played simulation games? You know, like Theme Park or Jurassic Park?
I love
Evolution.
Theme Park.
Brilliant. But you're not going to build that in a desolate wasteland. You're going to build it in a lush green environment that's enjoyable for your simulated people to run around in and to participate in and to grow and develop. When I play Jurassic Park Evolution, cracking game, by the way.
Yes, it is.
It's not all potholed. It's a beautiful, lush environment where you want your lovely little dinosaurs to flourish, and you're going to build environments that are safe for people that are visiting, so don't get eaten by dinos. When it do, it's funny. Why wouldn't we build a Goldilocks zone that is perfect for life?
Well, hold that thought. Climate change. Our civilization is on the cusp of environmental chaos.
By the way, that's a definite thing. I don't want anyone to think that we're not climate deniers or anything like that.
Absolutely not.
We're not climate deniers. There is climate change. We are speeding it up. Whether or not we're causing it is, I think, an element of debate, but it's definitely happening.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dan, just wanted to make that clear.
No, that's fine. This is in my notes. This is what I pulled out from research. So as Alex said, we're not denying it.
No.
So suggesting we could be an ancestor simulation created in hopes that we'd show our creators how to solve an energy crisis.
It's a bit worrying though, because if there's advanced ancestors that are using us to work that out, look at what we're doing at the minute. Isn't it ironic that we are pushing to electric vehicles, EVs, but we've got some people in countries that are deprived that are mining raw minerals out of the ground for batteries that eventually have no way of being disposed of properly currently?
Well, let's not forget that some of these batteries are exploding in people's houses. You know, cars going up in flames, electric bikes blowing up, scooters.
And it is an argument to say that we've got to start from somewhere. I'm not saying that these things aren't great in the long run. I actually think they are. I'm just saying there's an element of irony here at the moment. But yeah, maybe at some point we do find the answer. Perhaps our ancestors never had EV technology.
Here's an interesting one. DNA that contains a computer virus.
Yes.
So in 2017, a multidisciplinary group of researchers at the University of Washington proved that they could embed malicious computer code into physical strands of DNA. Their aim was to show that computers working in gene sequencing were vulnerable to attack. But they may also have inadvertently revealed that what we perceived to be biological reality was in fact computer code all along.
I don't know, mate. It sounds like they've just created the reality of a disaster film, personally.
I think we're reaching a little bit. Again, I feel like this is reaching, so weird
Oh,
news.
no. I'm not saying it's reaching. I'm saying if people can hack DNA, that's horrible.
Oh, right, I see, yeah.
Yeah, quite the opposite. I don't want people in a lab somewhere creating something that it accidentally... I've got some inverted commas in the air now, listener. I appreciate you can't see that. Escapes. Why do you want another COVID? It's horrible.
Enough, at the time of recording, before I came over, I was reading something from the New York Post.
Okay.
And apparently the Chinese have just created a mutant COVID-19 that is 100%, it can kill
Brilliant.
quite quickly.
And, if there were ancestors who've made this Russian doll theory and they are the base reality, surely they must be shaking their heads going, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Like, we are those sea monkeys in that water and we are fucking things up.
Oh, for fuck's sake, they're making another mutant virus.
I know.
Why? We shouldn't be dicking around with this stuff.
Sort your energy crisis out and help us stop fucking killing each other. Do you know what I mean? Like, they must be shaking their heads in absolute disdain.
Oh, look, they're in that lab again, making another deadly virus. Oh, look, they created a mutant of COVID-19. Oh, for
Look at these dickheads putting fucking virus code in cells. That's going to work out well, isn't it? Come on.
The next
Press a delete button.
Yeah. The next one's weird news. Some have proposed that recent unlikelihoods, so including Donald Trump's election, Brexit, the 2017 Oscars envelope mix-up,
Yeah, I heard this.
and that year's 25-point Super Bowl comeback could mean we're in a malfunctioning simulation, or whoever is pushing the buttons is screwing with us. But do you not just think it's all a bit of a coincidence?
And it's, yeah, I do. And at some point, I mean, some things I don't believe in coincidences because of the factors that are in play, and sometimes you do. And surely, if you look at the odds at some point will play out, even however ridiculous it might be, that you can get a 25-point turnaround. You can screw up a live television presentation at the Oscars. These things, however unlikely, can happen. They're called odds.
Yes. Here's an example. 2005 Champions League.
Okay.
AC Milan were 3-0 up at half-time.
And I was in the pub and I was crying into my pint with my friend Simon, and I said, "Simon, shall we go?" And he went, "Alex, have faith." He always said that, by the way, every Sunday when we watched, or Saturday when we watched TV down at uni. But he said, "Alex, have faith. They'll come around, they'll win it." I went, "I'm going to go to the bar, go for a slash, and then let's watch the first 10 minutes. But if it doesn't go our way, I want to go home." He went, "Okay, but I think this will prove you wrong."
3-3, you won on penalties.
And then we won, I think it was the FA Cup a couple of months later, with a Stevie G fantastic worldy free kick.
2006.
Yeah,
I remember.
and it's just, it's however unlikely. A mix of different factors and variables means that actually becomes a reality.
And talking of Trump and Brexit, that's democracy. That's what we as humans voted for. Well, we didn't vote for it, but that's what a majority voted for.
Well, or some AI targeted people for voting algorithms. But yes, you're right. There is some influence there that has played the odds, and there has been a real outcome. Yeah. And that's why I think some of these evidences, again, in air quotes, I don't subscribe to. I just think it's just the way things are. We talked about coincidences, the world's crazy coincidences.
That was a good episode.
And they are crazy, but for good reason, because however unlikely, the odds have turned out in favour or otherwise. Maybe just put a link in the description below, because that one is a brilliant other episode that we have covered, and I would encourage you to go and listen to it if you haven't already. It's so good.
Yeah. Another episode people should listen to is OTT 94, where we talk to Southern Ghost Society. So this is quite relevant.
Yeah.
It makes more sense than ghosts. So what we're saying is that the simulation theory makes more sense than ghosts.
Right.
Paranormal events are not hauntings or alien encounters, but glitches in the simulation. Hold on to that thought. This theory is one most explored by Reddit forums like Are We Living in a Simulation and Glitch in the Matrix, where users explore big ideas in philosophy funneled into the details of the odd or the occult. A storefront exists in a town one day, then it doesn't. Explanations include a slip between parallel timelines or a pop-up. A car passenger sees word render in the sky as if entering a new part of a video game. Elevators are frequent setting for glitch stories.
I have heard this, yeah.
The jump between floors seemed to encourage a slip within dimensions. Now, when we were talking to Dan and Andy...
They talk about elevated positions.
Andy said he was on an investigation. I can't remember where they said they were. Dan wasn't there.
No.
But several people saw Dan on the balcony of this investigation they were on. He wasn't there.
No.
And before I knew it, he was gone.
Yep, he walked off, and he wasn't actually present. And I think it's interesting how I guess that's what we talked about at the beginning, where all these things kind of can link together. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, have you heard of Philip K. Dick?
I think I had him in my notes, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so he's a renowned science fiction writer from yesteryear. He had visions of alternate realities, Dan and listener, which informed of many books. So The Man in the High Castle,
Yeah.
You had that one on? There's a book, but also it's made. It's a television dramatisation on Amazon Prime.
It's if Nazi Germany had won the war.
Correct. And there's other things that he has dreamt. So the Adjustment Bureau, which I think is an underrated, fantastic sci-fi film, by the way. Anthony Mackie is effectively an angel. I'm really downplaying it and I'm lowballing it, but it's such an interesting Matt Damon film with Emily Blunt. Unlikely love interest there, but it's a really good film. Anyway, that's all about predetermination and about reality. I won't say any more, but I would recommend it. It's an interesting concept. You'd have to be into sci-fi to enjoy it, but I think it's a quality film. All done by writer Philip K. Dick. Now, apparently, during his time on the spinning ball in the cosmos, he refers to his visions of events which have yet or haven't ended up sticking to our version of reality. So, call it a fever dream, call it a hallucination, call it a very good, vivid imagination. He thought, for whatever reason, all those things didn't apply. These were visions of alternate realities that he was tapping into.
Yeah.
And then he was writing his stories off those experiences. But ultimately, whatever he was experiencing, he was tapping into these multiverses, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't actually bleeding into ours, or at least becoming permanent. Now, this might sound familiar because of the Mandela effect, Dan. Because there could be experiences or things that never occurred that people have experienced. You mentioned about Fruits of the Loom. We talk about the Bernstein Bears. We talk about Mandela himself, which I subscribe to, and that's how the conversation started. There's logos, there's TV shows, there's braces on Bond villain love interests. There's all of these things that, as a mass consciousness, people feel as though they've experienced, but actually, when you go to look at the evidence, they're not there.
Yeah.
And the question is, well, are those realities that either we're observing, which isn't simulation, by the way, we're going slightly off topic but on the same thing, or are the other realities simulated realities that are being rewritten as we are living them, but for whatever reason they don't stick? And that is where, Dan and listener, we come to deja vu.
Yes.
But you looked like you were going to want to talk more about the topic of
Philip K. Dick.
Go on.
So in 1974, he underwent dental surgery, and it was reportedly
Which is not nice, is it? We've had that, haven't we?
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Shortly afterwards, his reality began to crumble.
Great drugs, though. Have you ever been under General for?
No. I mean, I don't know what they feed the Americans, because you see all these videos online, and they're all just like
talking nonsense.
It's
true though. I've had General 3 times in my life, twice for teeth. You have no idea what's happened. My dad was once. I shouldn't really commit this. I think I already have on record. I've told about this before. My dad had some teeth out, and I was 15, I think. He said, "Look, son," he did say this, by the way, but effectively he said, "Son, I need to come to the dentist with me. I'm going to have some teeth out. So stay, and then can you take me home, because I'm not going to be in any fit state to get on the tube and stuff." I was like, okay. Waited. Right, you can go collect your dad now. Like, oh yeah, collect my dad. He was on a different planet. And we walked outside, and we're walking to tube station. "Is you all right, Dad?" "Yeah, I'm fine." A bit quiet and unusual, but he's not really a talker, my dad. And we passed an ATM, a cash machine. I said to him, "Oh, Dad, can I borrow 200 quid?" He said, "Yeah, no worries." He was fumbling for his card. And bear in mind, listener and Dan, this is context. My dad is, for good reason, one of the tightest people you've ever meet in your life. He's of that boomer generation that looks after their money, has some money, not loads, but has some money, invested well, bought houses, is enjoying retirement. Again, he's not rich, but he's got some money. And because he's looked after it. So whenever I was growing up, I said, "Oh, Dad, can I have this? Or can I have that?" He'd go, "No, you can't."
Yeah.
For good reason.
Same.
That's because he didn't have it, but also because he, he was saving stuff. So when 15-year-old Alex is walking down the road and says, "Dad, can you get me some money?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." Not, "What do you need it for?" or "No, you can't." He's, "Yeah, sure." And reached for his card. You're like, what drugs in this world allows you to be that influenceable? I said, "Dad, I'm just joking. Put your card away. It's all good." He's like, "Okay, cool." But Those are amazing drugs.
You tested those waters, but you were honest
have
to
to.
say, Dad, I'm joking.
Well, he'd look at the card statement and go, why did they withdraw 200 quid on the day that I had my teeth out? And then let's just get into the whole kind of rabbit hole of telling porcupines and getting found out. It's not worth it. But anyway, they are powerful things.
They are. Now, according to Philip's accounts, he first
That's
saw...
a segue, wasn't it? Sorry.
Yeah. It makes sense because you just explained how powerful these drugs are.
Yeah, they're great.
He first saw a pink light that revealed universal truths to him. From that light, he apparently gained a much deeper understanding of philosophy and of the wider world. Next, and again shortly after the surgery, he started to see visions, hallucinations, or what some might call glitches in the Matrix.
Could also be a stroke, by the way.
It could well be.
Seeing lights, but okay. Yeah.
The past began to seep into the writer's present, so much so that he allegedly witnessed the modern world merge with ancient Rome. Ordinarily, citizens around him morphed into Roman guards, and Philip himself began to live a second life as a Christian of the time named Thomas. Later, referring to the first pink light, he further described it as experiencing an invasion of the mind by a transcendentally rational mind.
Wow.
That's a word. Now, perhaps the most rational explanation is what he experienced was some kind of psychotic break.
Yep.
But there are some alternate theories. For one, could be rational mind. He spoke of have been linked to a higher power. A power like the creator of our simulation, perhaps granting one of our most creative thinkers a peek behind the curtain. I'm just going to say it was the drugs, to be honest.
But they are good drugs.
I need some of those drugs.
Deja vu, Dan. We talked about it at the top of the episode.
Yes.
It causes a phenomenal feeling as though one has lived through the present situation before. Now, apparently it's an illusion of memory whereby, despite a strong sense of recollection, the time, place and the context of the previous experience are uncertain or impossible. Now, some people have said that is the code, and apparently it's a simulation correcting itself on the hard code behind it. So you did experience that event, but along a different timeline, and the outcome from the one you're on now.
Yeah.
So that's what they say is a glitch in the Matrix. It's literally that. And I think that's what the base of the Matrix obviously is founded on. But deja vu is where something has happened. Either it's an intersection of realities, or the code has gone, oh, you've done this before, but I didn't like that outcome. It took you on a path that wasn't predetermined. So I'm going to rewrite it, and you're going to go back onto the path you're supposed to play. Which I think is an interesting concept. And that there's either something omnipotent or something that is, or there's some kind of hard coding that is following your moves, and you can perhaps not, but seemingly deviate from a path, but ultimately you'll be nudged back into the one using deja vu. And the deja vu is the route where you could have gone, but actually you're not supposed to, so you're being nudged back into the route and your destiny.
Interesting. So I've got a story on Frano Salek. So you're talking about this destiny.
Yeah.
This is really quite compelling. So luck is a strange concept, right?
Yes.
Difficult to explain and certainly difficult to master.
But interesting enough, everyone knows it when they see it or feel it. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Some of us are luckier than others, of course, but Frano's luck played out to such extremes that his story has become linked with possible proof of some other higher force. Frano is known both as the luckiest and unluckiest man in history. It depends how you perceive this story. He was a music teacher leading an ordinary life until a train crash in 1962 that almost resulted in his death.
Crikey.
But he was pulled to safety whilst others died. I know it sounds bleak. Hear me out. A year later, a plane he was in began to plummet to the ground as an emergency door burst open.
Oh man, this is Final Destination.
It really is. Frano was actually dragged out of the plane during the fall. The eventual crash killed 19 people, but Frano survived as a result of falling through the open door and apparently landing in a nearby haystack.
No, this can't be true.
So we've already got 2 near fatal disasters in just a few months. But his bizarre luck and life story isn't done here. He went on to defy death a number of other times. He escaped a sinking bus. He escaped by being hit by another bus. His car exploded whilst he was driving it, and he was flung out of another car when it crashed into a ravine, leaving Frano to beat the odds once again by clinging onto a tree for dear life. Having come through all of that, however, Frano went on to win the equivalent of more than $1 million on the lottery. Death couldn't beat him, and fortune eventually fell into his lap. For some, his story is akin of a video game character, so unlikely that surely it can't have been pure chance.
Wow.
Is someone pulling the strings?
Yeah. Was it not his time, and there was code there that meant that they were nudging him back into... equally lucky and unlucky. I don't know which side of the coin he's on, that one.
We've got some shared experiences as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are examples of shared experiences involving large numbers of people and seemingly defying explanation. Now, first, throughout history, multiple sailors and pirates have written accounts of seeing mystical structures in the sky, like castles. Now, we've put one on social media recently from China in 2015.
Yes.
Which is very odd. Well, they've been out to sea. This may well be alternatively explained as ocean mirages appearing before tide cruise. Now, this phenomena is sometimes called the Fata Morgana. Now, you're looking at me perplexed. What is the Morgana? What is a Fata Morgana? Now, it's a complex form of superior mirage visible in a narrow band right above the horizon. Now, the term Fata Morgana is the Italian translation of Morgan the Fairy, Morgan Le Fay of Arthurian legend.
Right, yes.
These mirages are often seen in the Italian Strait of Messina. Have you been to Messina?
I haven't been to Messina, no. Lovely part of the world, though, here.
And were described as fairy castles in the air or false land conjured by her magic. But these apparent visions are also said to have led people to their deaths before. Sailors have followed what they've seen because it just doesn't make sense to them, and ultimately they've paid a heavy price. Indeed, such sightings are likely the inspiration behind the story of the legendary ghost ship, the Flying Dutchman.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about that in a previous episode, if I recall.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not as though bizarre things in the sky are only seen over the sea. Similar seeming impossibilities have appeared over land too, and even over densely populated cities. And I'm sure we'll talk about this in a second.
Yeah.
In 2015, citizens of China looked up to see what appeared to be an entire cityscape present itself amongst the clouds. You can see that on our social media. Each dark shadow doubling as a detailed outline of a different tower or building. Again, such was the strangeness of the sight that it caused many to think that this was a glitch in reality or in the simulation, just as when something in a video game loads in the wrong spot or clips through part of the environment. That's really annoying when that happens when you're playing a game.
It is. It's an annoying bug.
Various more scientific explanations have been put forward for the Sky City in China, the phantom palaces witnessed by seafarers. But not everyone is satisfied. Some claim that in attempting to explain them away, we're actually refusing to see what's really there, an apparent opening into the background mechanics of the sim that we're all stuck in. But I sent you the picture and you said that cityscape in the sky does not align with what is on the ground.
No, it looks entirely different. It's an entirely different makeup. They're quite clearly buildings. It's not one of those things where you look at the clouds, right? As a kid, do you ever do that? You looked up at the sky and thought, what's that shape? I think we all did it. Yeah. Or a dog, or that's a mermaid, or that's something. It's a fucking cityscape. There's skyscrapers, there's buildings, all bar people walking on the ground, and you don't see below a certain level because it's cloud. It's a city. If you didn't give context to that image, people go, why are you showing me a picture of a city? It's a bit foggy, but otherwise that's quite clear what it is. And if you look, the city below is almost a bit like Los Angeles. It's It's relatively flat. I mean, ironically, I know it's in a valley or it's covered, surrounded by mountains, but it's relatively flat. There's not that many tall buildings. This looks like New York in comparison to what's underneath it. It's really, really odd. You just bring it up now, Dan. But
yeah, it's really clear and apparent. You can see the normal ground level of like trees and cranes, and then in the clouds you can literally see a cityscape. It's
like someone has lifted the city up, and you're seeing underneath the foundations, looking upwards.
Yeah,
it's really bizarre. That's not a environmental phenomena. That's not as though clouds have formed. It's not cumulonimbus, and there's plenty of those in the shape of buildings. It looks very clearly like by the way, I don't know what it is clearly, and I don't know what to think it is. Simulation? Is it another reality? Is it? I don't think it's a reflection, but then I don't know what it is.
Mm.
And I think that's the interesting kind of perplexion is no one really knows. It's fascinating. I've got a story, Dan.
Yes.
The highway event. I talked about this before.
Yeah, this is what sold me on this episode. I was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
So tell our listeners.
So shared events, and this is an interesting one that I've come across. I don't think I'll do it justice, but anyway, I'll try and recount as best I can. So there is somewhat of a chilling story, and people talk about near-death experiences, or they have premonitions of something, and like, unfortunately, the man who got on the plane.
Frano.
Yeah, like predestination. People get glimpses or have a funny feeling or gut, and they decide to not do it, and then something horrific happens. Or they get a gut thing to do something, and they do it, and there's a positive outcome. But there's something that deep down is nudging them to perhaps do something different or not. And this is of the former, where something was going to happen. So this woman was travelling late at night in the early hours from her job. She'd worked all day and she had a night shift. So it's the early hours, 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And she's on her way home on the road, driving on the US highway. So pitch black. The lights are scrolling past. She's had a very long day. She's very tired. Okay. So she's travelling. Well, at the same time, a man is working at a petrol station and he's restocking shelves.
Yeah.
Not unfamiliar with that time of the day. That's a perfect time to restock it when customers aren't coming through. You get the store ready for the following day. He's tidying up after a busy day. He's sweeping. And he's caught off guard when this woman comes in beside herself. She's sobbing, she's shaking, she's crying. Almost unresponsive, but very clearly she wants help or being consoled. So he sits her down, gets her a cup of tea, talks to her. He's on the cusp of about to call 911, the ambulance. But after several minutes, he manages to work out what's happened. She starts to talk, and she's come to terms with what's happening. And the woman, although scared out of her mind, recalls what she thinks happened minutes before. So yes, she's tired, but she thinks she can drive well enough, and she sees some red lights ahead at a junction. And so she brakes and comes to stop very slowly, but eventually behind a lorry. So they're waiting at the traffic lights down. Imagine the scene.
Yeah. The
road's probably empty. It's automated, so they're probably waiting at the lights a couple of minutes before then they can go green and can sail through. But there's not an awful lot of traffic. But then what happens next is another vehicle behind her, probably someone else who's tired, fails to stop in time. They slam on their brakes, but it's too late. They collide with their vehicle. Oof. Her vehicle ends up being smashed, moved, bumped, and she ends up being wrapped around a lamppost. She knows it's her at the end of her time. She's aware of her imminent passing. And then she has obviously all the feelings that you would, I guess, hopefully never have this, but the feeling of dread or of coming to an end. And everything goes black. But then, almost for a blink of an eye, she's then back in the car and she's driving down. Wow. And for a second, she's had this experience, the reality that she's lived, but it actually hasn't happened. Well, hasn't happened yet. So she's blinked and she's had this experience where she has had this crash and she has passed, but she's back in the car now and it's early hours and she's driving and the lamppost lights are passing by her as she's driving at night.
It sounds like an out-of-body experience.
Well, she's terrified, and I guess you would be. You'd be absolutely shitting yourself. So, guess what? She drives for another few moments to the dark ahead, and what does she see in the horizon?
Don't tell me it's the lorry.
It's some red lights at the junction. She's seen this before, Dan.
Yeah.
So terrified, she pulls the car over. She happens to be at a petrol station. This is where we start the tale. She's beside herself. She can't process what she's just felt. She thinks it's experienced, and it's almost going to happen again. So she has to pull over at the last minute because she knows how this is going to end. So she's recounting this story to this very perplexed and confused teller, this person working at the petrol station. So she finishes the story. They hear a set of car tyres are locking. There's an almighty crash. Look out the window, and at the junction, just a couple of hundred yards ahead, where previously she had her vision, this vehicle collides with what would have been the car in front, this lorry, at the lights. And the question is, did she actually experience an alternate reality? Was there a glitch in the code? Was this where she was being nudged by deja vu, because actually her time wasn't meant to end then? And she was compelled to live it and go, actually, I don't want to go down that route. And she's nudged into the petrol station. But the story goes that she lived it, she experienced it, she recounted it, she deviated from that experience, and the outcome still happened. Which is
odd.
It's freaky and it's concerning, and it's. I hope that's just a folk tale, because if that's real, that's horrible stuff, right?
There's things in this universe I don't think we'll ever understand. I mean, I've got unanswerable questions, as I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
One of the intriguing aspects of simulation theory is the array of profound questions it raises. If we are living in a simulation, what does it say about our existence and purpose?
Yeah. Well, a scientific one to work out our forefathers' issues with climate change.
Does free will still exist in a predetermined simulation? Are the creators of the simulation akin to gods?
Yeah.
Again, religion. As of now, these questions remain largely speculative and philosophical in nature, as there is no concrete evidence to confirm or refute the theory. It's not actually possible to prove we're not living in a simulation. So I've got a couple of points here, which will probably wrap this up quite nicely, to be honest. It may be easier to prove that we're living in a simulation than to prove we're not. Now, nuclear physicist Zoran Davudi believes that cosmic rays, the most energetic particles known to man, would appear as pixel-like chunks if we are within a simulation, and unending beams if we're in base reality. Meanwhile, NYU philosopher David Chalmers doubts it's possible to prove that we don't live in the Matrix, and he says, you're not going to get proof that we're not in a simulation because any evidence that we get could be simulated.
Yeah.
Fuck.
We talked about GCSE science, Dan. I think it's an interesting one. Can I just very quickly talk about the double slit experiment?
Yeah, let's do it.
Have you heard about this?
No.
Okay. This is actual science. I'm not going to do it justice. I'm not a scientist, but this is established fact, and we don't understand why this happens. But if you have the right equipment, or you can look at it online, there's papers and there's theories, but it's unexplained. If you fire some particles at a slit in a flat surface, so think of it as a piece of paper, Dan.
Yeah.
And you cut a small slit, a vertical slit through that piece of paper, and the other side is a flat surface. Think of it as a wall. Okay, you're going to fire some electrons through that paper slit.
I'm starting to get deja vu.
Oh yeah. Code.
Could be code.
The other side, you expect it to radiate in a particular way, but the particles will clump together because they can only go through a certain space. They're not going to scattergun out the other side because they're being funneled through a particular shape, right? So they're all going to land on this wall behind this slit in a particular fashion. This clumping, they call it. Because then one's not going to go over to the right-hand side or the left-hand side because they're all facing this slit. They're all going to be all together at the other side.
Yeah.
Follow me?
Yep.
Make sense? Good. This makes sense to someone. Introduce a second slit, Dan. Identical, but next to the original one. 2 vertical slits. If you do the same experiment, eventually when they go through, one will cancel the other one out.
Yeah.
This is called interference pattern. Okay, so we know what the pattern should be if there are particles. Let's switch things up with electrons. Slightly different. If you fire electrons through the same slit, you'll see the clumping pattern as you would. So they go through that hole, they hit the other side, they're going to clump, they're only going to be a certain pattern because that's the space which they can travel through. Okay? If you fire 2 sets of electrons through 2 different slits, you should have 2 clumping effects on the other side. Again, like the other experiment. But you don't. And it shouldn't happen with electrons. You see, again, the interference pattern. So they're interacting in a very different way from what actually we've observed otherwise. Now, the experiment, to kind of understand a bit more about this, was that they actually modified it in a different way, where they will send a single electron through at a time to remove the possibility that they will collide with one another. Okay, so they're trying to remove all the various different aspects that might impact why these electrons are behaving differently than what they should do.
Yeah.
What they did was they added a detector at the moment the electrons pass through that slit. So not only are they observing what happens after they pass through, they've got a point in the middle. I hope I'm not losing people listening down. But there's a detector in the middle. So as it passes through that slit, you can see it, you can record it, and also you record what happens at the wall behind that slit. Okay.
Yeah.
And that should correlate between what's happening between those 2 points in time. As they observed the electron now passing through this slit, the wave interference stopped and the clumping returned. To then check back, they stopped observing through a detector and the interference returned.
Yeah.
So the difference there, the variable, is that nothing changed in terms of shooting it through that slit or what it was landing on. The fact of it was being observed. The moment you're looking at it and you're paying attention and you're turning this thing on, it behaves in a way which is expected.
Yeah.
The moment you don't observe it and you're looking at the end result, it doesn't happen the way you're supposed to.
So it's chaos.
Perhaps. But the question is there intelligence there? Because it's actually performing in a way that when we are watching it, it's as we anticipate. The moment we don't look at it and scrutinise it, it behaves in an odd fashion, not one that we'd expect. But the variable, the difference there, the difference is whether we are observing it or we're not observing it. The moment we're looking, we're not doing anything, we're not touching that particle, that electron, but the moment we're watching it very closely, it changes its behaviour. The moment you turn it off, it goes back to being random and unquestionable. Why? And no one can.
Makes no sense.
No one can explain why that behaviour and the difference between whether we're watching it or not. And it's a really weird thing to that people can't explain the behaviour of those items. It's not interference from the detector. It's not anything other than unexplained. Unless there's something else there. Is it intelligent behaviour? It's unlikely. Is it reality? Is it the reality that we're built upon? Are we not supposed to see it? But the moment we're looking, it's being simulated in the way that we should expect to see.
Yeah.
And that's where I think science is looking and testing. And it's interesting. I was searching for this experiment, other experiments in academia, and do you notice down the road, literally about 100 yards, University of Portsmouth wrote a paper and released it on simulation theory just last year.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
They're looking for funding to test and to trial certain experiments.
Interesting.
So this is actively being worked on in not Oxford or any of the Ivy League type universities. This is down the road in Portsmouth.
In the heart of our city. That's mad.
This is something that actively people are working on, which I think is absolutely fascinating. And this is fringe pseudoscience and conspiracy theories and the rabbit hole. And I know that a lot of this is mind-blowing, and we're not scientists, so we are going to kind of lowball a lot of this stuff. But even as a thought provocation, this is a really interesting concept. And as you've heard, listener, it kind of touches on religion.
Yes.
On the purpose of life. Is there life outside of the world and in our universe? And if there isn't, why isn't there? And what would we do if we had the power to simulate reality? Is this the base reality? Is what we're experiencing real? What is deja vu? What are glitches? And I think you put this into the melting pot of Mandela effect and folklore and crazy coincidences.
Yeah.
All of these things we've covered before, it makes you kind of scratch your head and go, I want to get off this ride. This is really, really weird.
It's weird. It's been an odd episode to discuss.
But it's fascinating. I don't think it's personally changed my opinion. I think there's stuff out there that goes into two camps for me. Either it's very weird, but eventually we'll understand it, or there's some things that Dan and listener, I don't think we're meant to. Yeah, I just think we're never going to know about it. And this might end up being the latter. Because I think it's so complex. I don't think we'll ever be able to get to a point where we comfortably can say one way or another whether this is a simulated reality. But it doesn't stop us from talking and postulating. No.
Wild. I wonder where this will lead us next to our next left field episode.
I have no idea. But if you like more of this, listener, we've got a whole playlist on YouTube that you can go over and look at on OTT GITS, or just search for On Topic Podcast on YouTube, and we've got a whole playlist ready for you to work your way through at your leisure, where all of these batshit episodes are stored.
Oh yes.
We've literally got hundreds of episodes, but I have curated lovingly the rabbit hole playlist for you. So if you haven't listened to any other of these episodes, you'll find the Mandela Effect, Crazy Coincidences, Folklore Tales. I don't know whether I have put Halloween in there. I think I probably put that in creatives, but the Halloween episode is a really good one from this year, or last year, should I say, 2023, where we talk about some fringe ideas.
Yeah, it's a good episode.
So there's plenty for you to get involved and listen to, listener. But I guess my question is, I don't think I've asked you, Dan, actually. Is this simulated reality? Where do you land? Obviously, I've made it clear that I don't know, but I'm probably veering away from not. But do you have any opinions from what you've read?
I don't think we are. You said it before. I think there are things we probably aren't meant to understand, but to be in a simulation, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure this is like a computer environment and we're just living in it.
But then, I guess, and this is perhaps rather grand suggestion, but perhaps this is where we leave it on. I guess my question is, if we are, so what? Does it make what we're experiencing any different? People's perception is their reality. So does it matter? If it's a simulation, it doesn't matter. You're still living it. You're still experiencing. Whether or not you're meant to go through this reality being led, or is it predetermined, you're still having those experiences, you're still having those feelings, you're still thinking those thoughts. Does it matter?
No.
And I think that's what I'm coming to. And I think that's an interesting concept for people just to kind of ponder and think about. If there's anything that you take away from this episode, I'd say your reality is what you make it. And I know that's a rather kind of soppy, cheesy kind of one-liner, but I really do question, does it really matter if we're in a simulated reality? Because you kind of make your experience what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
So stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah. That's it for another week. Having a bit of a downtime, aren't we?
Yeah, we've got some live events coming up. So we're going to take a short break, but we have got some episodes that we're going to dive into the vault, Dan, over the next couple of weeks.
There are some good ones in there. So we're going to do favourite 90s cartoons or kids' TV
so
shows.
good. Listen, if you haven't listened to this one, this was in the weekly roundup days.
It was.
I don't think it was on OTT.
Late 2019.
And we had such good fun. I don't recall as often, because I'm not like Dan. I just come up with ideas and I just move on. But I don't know where it's born out of. But invariably it's nostalgia, right?
I think it was one of your nostalgic ideas, and we ended up diving in, and it's a good episode.
It's really good.
We need to do a volume 2 this year.
We do.
Maybe,
I think we do.
Maybe when I'm back from Tokyo.
Maybe. And this is where we talk about, some of the things we were watching growing up that we enjoyed, and some of perhaps our weekend routines, live and kicking.
Oh my God!
And all those those things, which I guess are UK specific, but some of the things we talk about aren't UK cultural. They are hopefully a lot of the Western world kind of experiences, or perhaps further east. So do get your ears around that episode, because we had a lot of fun. And yeah, there's plenty of opportunity to get involved for Volume 2.
Yep, and we're revisiting retro gaming from 2018, another late 2018 episode.
One of our very earlier episodes, in fact.
Yeah,
like
it's really
3
good.
or 4.
We talk about being handed down Nintendo Entertainment Systems, Spectrums, N64 games.
Playing games on cartridge, discs and tapes.
And we got a lot of feedback for that episode as well.
Yeah, we did. Lots of listeners,
really
lots of
good.
streams. A lot of people who enjoyed it. So, again, another opportunity. We'll probably revisit some more of that. So if you want to recount some of your tales. I mean, Dan, I keep on saying this to you, and I will furnish you with some money in your hand, but when you do go over to the fair country and the fair islands of Japan, if you can have some downtime whilst your significant other is running herself ragged around the streets of Tokyo, because that's what she enjoys.
Oh yes.
There is Hard Off, which is a second-hand, oddly named, but obviously appropriate to Japanese culture, second-hand store, and they have some wonderful electronics to rifle through. It'd be quite nice if you can bring back some retro stuff, but I appreciate you've got limited baggage size. But anyway, we talk about some of these retro devices and computer games, and yeah, there's plenty to kind of reminisce and to talk about, and yeah, it's all in that episode, and it's a wonderful one to talk about. There's a lot to be said for gaming in the 90s and early noughties, where you had that tangible gaming experience.
Yeah.
Everything was very physical. Rumble packs, expansion packs for Nintendo 64. You had cumbersome cables that now enabled you to connect to the internet and PlayStation 2. All of those different things were in the mix, whereas now it's all digital downloading, streaming, and intangible, and do you actually own anything, really? You pay money, but any time they can take it off the cloud and you don't have it. Well, you can't do that on Nintendo 64. Yeah. Those cartridges upstairs in a box, gathering dust, hopefully not too much, because I want them to be able to be playable again, to be sold, but you can't take that away from me. That's physical, that's tangible, that's mine. And I think there's much to be said about, that physicality and devices that we were playing on when we were growing up. So yeah, it's a really good episode. Fun memories, of course, nostalgia again, but again, a great one to get involved with if there's anything you want to share once you listen to it. It's a really good Vault episode. They both are, and they'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to ever get involved, follow our socials. We're on the Topic Podcast. Oh no, On the Topic Pod, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, TikTok. Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gmail, which is on the Topic Podcast at gmail.com. And then actually we've got YouTube and WordPress. Yeah,
well, WordPress, we've got some bonus content, some blogs. We've got our ugly mugs, our bios. We've got our newsletter, so you can subscribe and be notified the moment an episode drops. That's on topicpodcast.wordpress.com. And we're also on YouTube. I've already talked about it earlier on. I think it's at OTTGITS. Or On Topic Podcast on YouTube. We're going to do search for that. It really helps us if you can hit that subscribe button and a notification bell to be announced when a new episode drops, because it's algorithms, but it helps us to know that you're engaging. We can see the numbers, we can see streams, so thank you so much for doing it. We do have some plans in the pipeline in the near future of doing some video content.
I really hope this goes through.
We don't want to spoil it, but Dan's going to be bringing some things back from Tokyo that might be more suitable for the visual entertainment medium. 2 podcasters trying snacky snacks. So you might have said too much, but we won't say anything else. But yeah, so more content on YouTube. So please do subscribe, hit the notification bell, like what you like, and leave in those comments anything that you want to get involved in, and yeah, you can be part of the show. Yep. Also linked to Podcasters Spotify for podcasters.
That's it. Well, you can leave us a voice message, get involved like some of our previous listeners, and you can hear your voice on those sound waves.
Oh, yes.
Well, that's it for another week. We will be back, fear not. But I've got to drive home now, and I'm going to be questioning A, reality, B, hope there's no deja vu, and C, it's going to be a bit...
Pull into that petrol station, Dan.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
There's no petrol station on the way home from here.
I'm not sure that's a good or bad thing.
Yeah. Well, I've been Dan.
Hopefully still will be in the future. And I'm going to ponder whether or not we're in the base reality, and actually, which doll are we in that Russian doll of our construct. I'm Alex.
We'll see you soon.